I should have woke you when you were sleeping. I should have woke you when I had the chance. Hey, hey. But you look so peaceful. You must have been dreaming. Must have been dreaming. Dreaming about the days in the past. Dreaming about the days in the past. Dreaming about the days in the past. You know, my dad passed away a few years ago, and I used to stop to see him in his apartment, him and my mom, and every time I go to see my dad, he'd say, Billy, I ever tell you the story about the hawk on top of the bank in the corner of Ramsey Street? Swooshed down there and got a squirrel for lunch. I said, Dad, you just told me that story last week. Yeah, that's okay, Billy. I just want to make sure you know that one. One day I stopped to see him, and he was sleeping on the couch. He was sleeping on the couch, very quietly. And I didn't want to wake him and hear that same story again, so I turned around and I walked out the door and hopped in my car. Got 2 blocks away and I started to cry. I should never have left my dad there sleeping, you know. Should have woke him up and heard that same story again. I should have woke you when you were sleeping. So after that, I made a point, every time I stopped to see my dad, I'd have him tell me about something in the past. When my brother and I were little kids growing up, we always asked him, Dad, what you doing in World War II? He was in the Navy, you know, and back then he dropped out of CN College and enlisted in the Navy, and there was only one requirement: you had to know how to swim. He was a good swimmer. So anyway, he couldn't tell us about his experiences in the war when we were little kids. But he said, Billy, you know, after basic training, we left the harbor in New York with the Statue of Liberty at our back. Headed down towards the Florida Keys. Then we headed towards Central America and the Panama Canal, went across the canal, ended up in the Pacific Ocean and headed towards Brisbane, Australia. What an adventure. Brisbane, Australia, that was the staging point for the Allied forces before they made their big push up north towards Japan. He was assigned a PT boat. And he said, you know, Billy, our first assignment, we were on these islands, I think it was Guam. Traveling with another PT boat right by our side. We started to take fire from the shore, and the boat right next to us blew up there, Billy. Turned around and came back to see if there were any survivors, but there were no survivors that day. You know, that could have been my boat, Billy, but we lived to see another day, I guess. Then it was time we were playing possum in the cove. You know, we were waiting for those old barges to come down from Japan with those young Japanese recruits on them. While these kids were only 16, 17 years old, Billy. Sure enough, an old clinkety barge came down, and the captain said, throw a torpedo into her, boys. We blew that boat up, Billy, and we could smell the fuel oil burning and the skin of those boys burning, and I heard the screaming and yelling. The captain said, come on, boys, let's take the PT boat out there and see if there are any survivors out there. And sure enough, we went out there. He took the gun from his holster and started to shoot all the boys in the water, you know. Sounds cruel, Billy, but the captain knew that the sharks were going to get them men. We couldn't take any survivors. 'Cause I should have woke you when you were sleeping. Yeah, the war was winding down. We started to head towards Tokyo Bay, Tokyo Bay. Japanese surrendered to the Allied forces, and we had our good uniforms on and our flags were waving on the ship and everything, but nobody felt like taking shore leave. No sir, we just headed towards Hawaii. We got to Hawaii, I believe, and saw the sunken ships there that were in the channel, and it reminded us of why we got into war. I can only tell you, Billy, that war is a terrible thing. There's no winners in war. Everybody loses. 'Cause I spoke you. I go and see my dad once in a while up at the Saratoga National Cemetery. That sacred ground up there, you know, the Revolutionary War was fought up there around that area. It's an honor that my dad is buried up there with a lot of brave men and women, you know. And I bring my djembe up there and I play it up there and it bounces off the marble walls up there. It sounds so cool. But I just wish I could hear my dad tell me that one story one more time about the hawk on the top of the bank on Ransom Street that swooped down and got that squirrel for lunch. 'Cause I spoke you. Sleeping, I shook you and I had the chance. Hey, hey, but you looked so peaceful. You must have been dreaming. Must have been dreaming.